Hey everybody, Papa Todd Takes. I'm Papa Todd. It's time for 5 minutes to Monday, our weekly OSHA Roundup and workplace or occupational safety talk. Let's go through and take a look at what's going on this week. This week was a pretty light week. Oh, by the way, it is August 2nd of 2026 right now, so that's the week I'm referring to as the week before, last week of July. So it was pretty light week as far as public releases. There was only one major investigation done by federal OSHA this week, and this was a pretty significant incident. It happened at a Maine wood pulp facility where two young individual employees died from exposure to hydrogen sulfide gas. So significant. One was 26 years old. He was an engineer at the facility. The other, I'm guessing, was only 20 or 21 years old. They were a junior in college. So at University of Maine, a tragic death. They were not found for 3 hours after the exposure had even dissipated. So they weren't even accounted for at the time. One held on for a few weeks in a hospital and ICU unit. It's tragic reading the statement from the family there. So let's go through this and kind of figure out what happened. Let's talk about the fines or proposed penalties, and then let's get some lessons out of this. Let's make sure that we're learning from these tragedies that happen, right? So again, this was in Maine, and there's the proposed penalties for this of $794,500. Significant. There were 4 willful and 8 serious citations that came out of this. They investigated 2 things. They investigated this death, and then there was also, and that happened in January 27th during a shutdown process. And then there was a March 7 fire that occurred, and I think that was not another. There was another hydrogen peroxide mixed with pulp, but a fire had occurred then. There, 4,400 gallons of hydrogen peroxide. I'm making sure I'm looking over here to make sure I'm getting this right. So anyway, hydrogen sulfide gas, it's colorless, right? You're not going to see it, but you will smell it. This is H2S is hydrogen sulfide that's the real strong rotten egg smell. That's hydrogen sulfide. So let's make sure we're aware of that when we're out there and we're teaching our employees hey, if you smell this, you need to get out of there because it could be dangerous, right? So, but anyway, it is extremely flammable, highly toxic. You can't be around this stuff. So again, 4 willful citations, 8 serious citations, just shy of $800,000 worth of proposed penalties coming out of it, which is nothing compared to 2 deaths. Tragic, right? So, and you know, you can only assume there's going to be a heck of a lot more coming out of this from lawsuits, right? So, not good. What were the alleged deficiencies here? There was inadequate hydrogen sulfide alarms, inadequate breathing equipment, no medical evaluations or fit testing for respirator users. I don't know that these 2 employees would have been wearing them anyway, but during the digging, you're working with some hazardous gases and potentials for mixing of incompatible stuff. Your team better be well trained in the use of respirators, and you got to make sure they can safely do so. Part of that is a medical evaluation that has to be done. There's a questionnaire. You can look it up online for the most part, or go to your licensed healthcare provider who does this kind of testing. They can give you their listing of questions, and annually your employees will fill it out, turn it in. Licensed healthcare professional reviews it, determines whether they need to come in for a pulmonary function test or a PFT. They go through that testing, and then they do fit testing to make sure that's properly sealed, that they know how to wear it and it properly seals around them. They check a million things. I won't bore you with the details on that if you've never done it. Look it up. You can either have third party or do it yourself. They make some smoke kits and things like this that you can test your own employees with. They had inadequate hydrogen peroxide hazard training. So if people are going to be working around chemicals, they need to know what the hazards are associated with that. And it's pretty easy. Your chemicals, pull them out, take a look at the SDS sheets or the safety data sheets, review it, see what the main hazards are, how you're supposed to handle it, and just cover it with your employees. And then poor housekeeping ends up getting people a lot of times, and that's how that fire started, it sounded like. This particular mill in Maine had been inspected 13 times since 2017. So been quite a few inspections there. So I don't know if how many issues were going on there, but it sounds like they had some concerns. 13 times. One of those inspections was a result of 14 employees being hospitalized for an earlier exposure in the exact same area as these two young individuals passed from. So willful, right? You know, and you're choosing not to correct it. So what are the lessons learned? So startups, shutdowns, maintenance outages, things like that, you got to treat these as high risk, non-routine operations. What we do during shutdowns, or what I've always done, most plants do, at the beginning of every day, let's have a communication. We get together, we have a stand up, we talk about it, make sure we're emphasizing safety, make sure they know where they can go, where they can't go, what crews are working where, what kind of hours, who to contact in the event they have questions or something comes up. Very high risk operations. We got to treat them as such, and we got to be out there. We got to be visible on the floor during those times, more so than usual. Be there so they understand, because it's also time, unfortunately, where a lot of employees tend to take shortcuts, or they're trying to rush and get through it to something. And they're not used to doing these things. Even if you do shutdowns annually or semi-annually, they're not routine. They're non-routine. Okay. Before beginning, verify if you're working around chemicals. So I wrote these things down. I don't do a whole lot of work this way. I did work in a location once that we had a lot of this stuff going on. Gas detection systems, are they working properly? Make sure they're good, they're calibrated, PM'd, all that good stuff. Ventilation and scrubber systems remain active where needed. Make sure that's clean in the air to protect your team members in case of a mix-up. Automatic systems have to respond safely. Are they set up the way they were? In this case, there was a pH probe that was signaling to keep sending stuff, and it was accumulating back in a pipe, which kind of led to this, it sounds like. Make sure that incompatible materials are not stored in a manner in which they can mix. Not a good thing there. And then uninvolved employees should be kept clear. If you're working, doing out of routine stuff, and people are there that don't need to be there, get them out. Get them out. So it's for everybody's best, right? They're not going to get in anybody's way, one, and two, could have prevented this, it sounds like. They were also invested by the Chemical Safety Board on this. If you've never gone to the Chemical Safety Board site, you can go in there and they have investigation results, and they make some excellent videos that you can go in and look for stuff like this. And they really recreate the scenes on what had happened with these, computer generated re-imaging and stuff, and they go through it and talk through it. They do an excellent job of really breaking it down and explaining it in a way that even if you're not an expert in any of this stuff, that you'll understand. It's pretty good. So I suggest you go in there. I doubt this one has been released yet. But what they found during their investigation was that there was sulfuric acid reacted with high pH sulfur containing process fluids generating the hydrogen sulfide. So they mixed, right? So a downstream pH probe continued calling for sulfuric acid while fluids accumulated upward in a pipe, which sounds like that is what ended up reacting, if I read that correctly. So a scrubber fan was then turned off, and hydrogen sulfide escaped through process openings into the building. The two employees who died were working on an equipment drawing project completely unrelated to the shutdown. Didn't need to be there. And then again, I think I referenced this earlier already. The two that died were not located until more than 3 hours after the remaining gas had dissipated. Tragedy all the way around. So let's talk about the takeaway from this. I think we'll go with this. There's a line of fire takeaway that we should be focusing on here, because line of fire, a lot of times we think about solid things moving, equipment moving, putting myself in the way of harm, but we're thinking about hammers, we're thinking about material shooting out of something, right? Well, it doesn't have to be that stuff. Excuse me, sorry. The line of fire hazards are not limited to pinch points and moving equipment, right? Toxic gases, chemicals, electricity, energy that can move and do harm and travel outside of the immediate area it's normally in. You can be in the line of fire of that stuff, right? So inside an arc flash arc flash boundary would be a line of fire. That's a line of, you're placing yourself in the potential line of fire, right? So be aware of that. So non-routine work, you need to make sure you're doing things. One, does it have clear boundaries? Make sure people are out of there that don't need to be in there, because stuff just goes wrong in non-routine. Access control, an addition onto the clear boundaries, right? Make sure, put some signs up, make sure people, somebody's in charge to keep people that don't need to be in there out of there. Personnel accountability. Do you have a good way of accounting for everybody if something does go wrong, that you can get everybody out, make sure all your people are safe? And if somebody's missing, now that sets your emergency response plan into kick into high gear, right? And then finally, communication with employees whose normal work may be affected, right? Make sure we're communicating to people that, hey, we're going to be doing some work in your area, right? That's part of the first step of lockout tagout, right? Is notifying affected persons. So that includes, if you're shutting an area down, consider locking out the area. Just kind of think of it that way in your head and go through those 7 steps, right? So that is our discussion on the findings of this week. Tragic, 2 young lives that didn't need to be lost. So now, while there's nothing along the lines of anything new coming out of OSHA right now regarding machine guarding and lockout tagout or control of hazardous energy, back in 25 they started an NEP, or a National Emphasis Program, and that continues through 2030, and that focuses on equipment that can cause amputations. So they're really focusing on amputations. So think about brake presses, saws, things like this, right? So let's take that, this week, let's focus on those programs, right? So let's pull out our control of hazardous energy or lockout tagout program. Let's review it. Let's go through it, make sure we've updated it, put the date that you updated on, mark any changes that you've made. One thing, if you use different color locks for different things within the facility, make sure those locks are all called out in your lockout tagout program. So there's at least one place clear to know, hey, nope, that's not a lockout, that's a security lock that we use for this. Red are lockouts, or blue, whatever it might be, for different activities. Make sure that's called out in there. That's one thing that snuck up on me once in my early years in this. I took away from it. So the NEP focuses on machine guarding, hazardous energy control, machine operations, servicing and maintenance activities, and all equipment presenting amputation risks. So we're going to take a look at that. Make sure your maintenance activities, your maintenance crew that does lockout tagout most of the time, is very clear on the rules and what they're going to do. So let's go out and then inspect the floor. And I wrote some things down. I want to make sure that we're taking care of this when we go out and take a look for it. Write these down on a list, go out. You don't have to inspect every piece of equipment, but man, if there's a risk for amputation, let's look at those pieces of equipment specifically this week, okay? Let's go out and take a look. Do we have interlocks on there? And if so, are they functioning properly? Nobody's overridden them. Sometimes people like to take falsely make a magnet, think it's in contact with something, right? I don't know why people would do it. It's kind of dumb, but that's a common one to find. Look for OUTA exposures, right? What's an OUTA exposure? So OSHA says you have to protect employees with machine guarding, they shouldn't be able to reach over, O over, U under, T through, A around. OUTA, over, under, through, around. If I put a machine guard here, covering this, and I can reach over, under, through, around, it's probably not adequately guarded. Now, it gets tricky with when you have movable guarding and stuff like this for some of these things, but for big, large, think presses and stuff like that, you should not be able to reach over, under, through, around. So go take a look at that and evaluate your whole facility and make sure you're good. Make sure people aren't clearing jams without locking those things out, because that's how a lot of people get pulled into stuff, right? Setup and adjustment work is being incorrectly treated as minor servicing. Okay, so this is one guy's maintenance teams that I've worked with over the years, and maintenance guys are really good, don't get me wrong. However, everybody doesn't like doing all the details sometimes, and one of the things I've seen people do, kind of away from this, but just something to make sure you're checking out. So one of the exceptions to lockout tagout is for minor servicing and repair that's routine, right? routine, repetitive, and integral to the operation of the equipment, right? So that's an exception. But then there's also one for troubleshooting where you lock it out and then you remove the guards, and sometimes you have to turn that thing on with the guards removed so you can physically see or figure out what's happening in there. But it's only for that troubleshooting step. Once they've determined it, they got to lock it back out again. And I have walked up on crews in the past at other businesses I've worked at, and they're just doing the whole thing. They're not troubleshooting that. And they'll try to tell you they are. It's like, no, that's not the way it works. There's a very specific call out. It's just a shortcut I've seen I don't know how many times over the years, and you got to stay on top of those guys and make sure they're not doing that. Make sure that people know how to release the stored energy during that step, and isn't accounted for in your energy control procedure, right? So stored hydraulic, do they bleed off the hydraulics, bleed off stored air, anything like that that may be in the lines, because that stuff there can be a shift or a movement that would cause those things to release. Now you have a sudden uncontrolled move of that piece of equipment. So make sure we're checking for that. And then finally, contractor work, group lockout, accountability, make sure they are doing their group lockouts the correct way, right? So with that being said, that is this week's 5 Minutes to Monday. So workplace safety. Guys, if you guys like this, or if you think there's something I should do to make this better, go ahead and let me know in the comments afterwards. Please like and subscribe. I'm going to build up a bank of stuff. I have some good ideas. I think they're good ideas. I'm going to build this up, and then I'll be releasing a tranche of stuff a few months down the road here. So I hope you like it. Let's keep our heads on. Let's be out on the floor. Let's be visible this week. Let's keep our employees safe. Nobody gets hurt this week. Papa Todd out, guys. Have a safe week.